Hello everyone, this is John Galt speaking, here with a tutorial video on how to work with the multiplayer FPS basic template that should be showing up on the UE4 marketplace sometime in the near future. So I said I wasn't going to make this video until it was actually accepted because there might be some changes that had to be made, but I'm going to go ahead and make this anyway because I believe that the majority of this will still be the same, even if I do have to make some changes to pass it through the submission process for the marketplace. So I'm going to go ahead and open this project up, and I've already made an overview video talking about the features of this template. So this video here, we're just going to talk about some of the manipulation of this template. And as with all the other products that I sell, this is also made to conform with the other templates that I have on the marketplace, such as the simple capture the flag and the multiplayer teams and class select. So I don't want to have to rehash out every single thing that I've already talked about in those videos. So anyone who owns this template, this FPS basic template, I would encourage you to also watch the videos that pertain to the simple capture the flag template and the teams and class select, because there's a lot of similarities between all these templates, specifically when it comes to the map manipulation, right? Like if you want to change the map entirely to a new map and things like that. So go watch those. There's also a video that is a universal video for all my products about the packaging process and the testing process of this template. So this is going to focus strictly on, basically the map manipulation and things like that, as far as the objects that are in the map. So this has the exact same menu system in it that all my other templates have. So I'm not going to talk a whole heap about that as far as the modifications of it are concerned. So we're going to talk about these pickups, the player starts, the auto turrets, and the team volumes, right? That's what we'll focus on first. Actually, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pretend like we're going to make a map, but we're going to use the suggestion that I give in all those other videos. So instead of straight up deleting these maps and creating brand new ones, we're just going to leave these maps as is, the names and all that stuff, but we're essentially just going to come in here and blank this map out to where it's all the way down to just a blank terrain, okay? So over here in the world outliner, I'm going to select the BP Auto Turret Master, and I'm just going to scroll down through here, and we're going to go all the way to right above the landscape, and you can see what all this it selects in the level, and I'm just going to hit the delete key. Then we're going to take all these text renders here, and we're going to go ahead and select all those as well, and we're going to hit the delete key. Then we're going to take this item here called Team Start Base, and we're going to select all those as well. And then we're going to hit the delete key. Okay, so this is the suggestion that I give in all those other videos. So instead of trying to change the map names or delete the map and put a new map in here in its entirety, that's actually a pretty large process, because this system is set up to do team, give you the ability to change your map on the fly while you're in the game. Like the admin, the host of the game, can actually cycle the map. Well, there's a lot of things that are all connected together in order to allow that to happen. So when you change the name of the map, it has to be changed in a bunch of different places. So my suggestion in those other videos was to, okay, look, I understand you guys want to make your own map. So by doing what we just did here, this is just a landscape. It has no materials on it or anything. There is a dominant directional light in here, and a skylight and an atmospheric fog. Then there is a light mass importance volume and a character indirect detail volume. So that's it. That's all that's in this level. So this suggestion will save you guys a ton of work from having to go change all those names in all those different places and stuff. So you start from here. So you can readjust, remove everything around. You can, this terrain is already ready to be sculpted on. So you guys can come in here and start sculpting, start assembling your buildings and your structures and putting your trees and rocks, and basically just don't change the name of the map. Otherwise you're going to create yourself a ton of work. And you could even copy and paste new levels in here. Like say you had an asset pack that it had a level in it, and you wanted all that level to be in here. Well, you could copy it out of the other level and simply paste it in here, right? So you could do that, and that would still not involve you having to change the map names, okay? All right, so I'm going to get this back to here. And this is actually where we're going to start at. So let me go ahead and build the lighting here to get rid of this pre-baked shadows on the ground. And we're going to get this started because I can go over a lot of the manipulation of these actors that are in this project by simply doing this. So we're going to pretend for a moment that we have sculpted our terrain. We populated it with grass and rocks and trees and materials, and we build our structures, our corridors, our hallways, and all that stuff. Pretend we did that. So if you hit the play button at this point right now, after you do all that, you're going to do this, right? You're literally just going to fall through the map, and that's the end of that. So let me get back up here above the terrain. So the very first thing is that I've included a third team. This is a team-based multiplayer project. So technically speaking, there is a third team, which is designated as the lobby team. So I talk about this in all those other videos. So I would suggest, seriously guys, go watch them all because they all pertain to each other. There's a lot of redundancy here. So the lobby team is something that I put in here to be able to designate an area, a place in your map where you could designate it eventually, if you want to, as a no combat zone, right? So you could build a bunker, for example, and put it underneath the map that you can't even see it, but you can spawn into it via the menu using the lobby team. You put your lobby spawn points in there, or you could build some kind of a spaceship way up in the sky. The main important thing about this lobby area would be that you would want this to be the only way in or out of the lobby is by using the menu that's included in this project. So once you determine where that area is going to be, if you look in the blueprints folder, underneath gameplay, underneath level, there is a folder in here called player start. So this is the custom player start blueprint that I created for this project, which you drag into your level, and you can position it any way that you choose to. And so we're going to pretend like this is the lobby area that we designated, and you simply just put in your team start, and you make sure that it's set to the lobby team, right? So when you drag this team start master into your level, when you select it in the level, if you look in the details panel here, you can change the team by simply changing this drop down here. So if this is meant to be the lobby team, you just make sure that you set these all to be the lobby, and you can drag as many of these lobby spawn points in the area that you designate as your lobby as you want. Then you find another area of your map that you want to designate as the red team area. You drag in that same team start, orient it however you choose to. Just make sure it ain't underground, right? That's the main thing. Otherwise, the character will spawn underneath the ground. And then this is going to be the red side, so we simply set that team start to be the red team. And then you, once again, just simply drag out as many of these and scatter them all over the side of the map that you designate as the red side. Then you do the same thing for your blue side, right? So you pick out an area on the map that you want to be the blue team, drag in the exact same team start, orient it the way that you choose, and then you make sure you set this one to be the blue team. And then once you do that, you can just copy by holding down the Alt key and drag as many of these as you want on the side of the map that you designate as the red team or blue team. So at this point, that phenomenon that we had a minute ago where when we tried to spawn in here, we fell through the map. Now you can pick a team and it will spawn you at one of these team starts that it picks at random, right? So this is a random spawn point. You might spawn here or there or anywhere on the red team. And then you can change teams, right? So it'll kill you off the team that you're on, and it'll do the same thing, which is spawn you at one of the random blue team spawn points. Or alternately, you can go to the lobby, which would be that area that you designate that is non-combat, right? So there's no logic in here to prevent you from being in the lobby and shooting. The thing is, this template has no team damage, which means if all the people in the lobby, they're all going to be on the same team, which would be the lobby team, which means, yeah, you can shoot each other, but it ain't going to hurt you, right? Because there's no team damage. But if anybody from the red or the blue team manages to get into your little lobby area, this technically works like a third team, meaning the red team and the blue team will be able to kill this dude. The people in the lobby, if they get out of the lobby, they can kill the red team or the blue team. So you would want to, once again, make sure that if you intend to use this as I made it, which is for a lobby team, you want to make sure the only way in or out is the menu. In other words, people in the blue team can't just come into the lobby willy-nilly and start killing everybody, right? Okay, so that covers the team starts. That's literally as easy as it is. That's all you got to do. So the next thing that I guess we'll talk about here is the team volume. Actually, you know what? Let's do the turrets, right? So in the turret folder, there is a blueprints folder in here, which has a BP auto turret master. So this is an auto turret that I include in this project, which is team oriented. And to set the turret up, you simply bring in the turret, and you can orient this the same as with anything, however you want it to. And then, same as with the team start, there are some parameters in the details panel here under defaults that you can manipulate and change. Okay, so first of all, you pick out what team you want this turret to be for, which would be, in this case, we put it over here on the red side. That means this will be a red team turret. Then you have a radius here, which you can expand by dragging this box, and you can see that the little collision starts growing. That is the radius at which this turret is able to detect other players on the opposite team. And then, of course, you do have a tick rate that you can manipulate, which really there ain't much reason to. And you can also manipulate the fire rate. In other words, this is how often the turret will fire at enemies when they're in this radius. And then, of course, this is also a projectile-based turret. So this projectile here is actually what is shooting out of this turret. So we'll go ahead and talk about this too, because this is kind of important, because how much damage does this thing do, right? How big is the projectile? What does the projectile look like? So to manipulate that, you actually open this BP projectile turret master blueprint, and if you look in the class defaults by clicking here or here, you will see why is the team in? Oh, that's the, did I open the wrong blueprint? No, I guess not. Oh, well, I have this in here, this enumeration. I don't think this is supposed to be here, right? I'm pretty sure that it doesn't make no difference what team the projectile is on. But anyway, let's focus here, and maybe this works, and if it don't, I'll have to look at that. You might have to actually set the team here too, but I don't think I did this that way. So for now, we're just going to leave it at the lobby. So anyway, in the class defaults here, you can determine how much damage it does by changing this value. Currently, it does 25. The AoE is the splash damage that it does. So currently, that's set to 600. This is the sound effect that it plays when the projectile impacts and explodes. And this is the particle effect that it plays when it explodes. So you can manipulate these things. Like if you want to use a different visual for your projectile, you can change it here. And if you look in the viewport here, this is where you could change that, right? So the explosion. But this is also editable. So this is the visual indication of the projectile. So you select that one here and you can change it. And then there is a sound cue for the projectile. So this is what the projectile sounds like when it's flying through the air. If you want to change it, which you will, this is where you change that. And then the projectile movement, there's also some settings in here that you guys can tamper with, which is the speed of the projectile. You can see that I have that set to 1500. And then in the velocity, that is also set to 1500. And then right here, you can manipulate whether the projectile has gravity or not, whether it bounces or not, and that kind of stuff. So there's two blueprints that work together for these turrets. You have the actual turret blueprint, and then you have the projectile that the turret fires when it shoots. So that's why these two are in the same folder. So if you want to manipulate the damage and the visuals of the projectile, it's done in this projectile blueprint. If you want to change aspects of the turret, it's done in the turret blueprint. See right here, you could even create yourself a new projectile if you want to, and this is where you plug it in the turret, right? So if you create a new one, you can plug it in here. This is the team. This is the muzzle socket name. So there's quite a few settings in here with this turret that you can manipulate and change. Okay. So by default, this thing is already set up to work by just doing what we did, right? It's already using the default projectile that I include in this project. The default projectile already has some visuals and some sound effects and some damage values. So to make another turret, you can simply, okay, so we're going to put a turret for the blue team as well. Drag the turret in, you point it the way you want it to be. You go into the details panel with the turret selected. You designate the team that it's for, and then you can change the radius, right? So you would probably want these to be the same for both, so you could look at what size you have that one set to and set this one to the same, or you can make them different, right? It's up to you guys, however you want to do it. And I meant to put that for the blue team. Okay, so that's basically the manipulation of the turret. So I'm going to go ahead and spawn in here, and just to make sure that these are working, I'm going to sprint over here to this blue turret and see if I can make it mad and see if it'll start tracking and shooting at me. Oh. I think that radius is too small for some reason. Let me crank that up a little bit more. Let's try that again, shall we? about now. There we go. Okay, so there you go, guys. That is the operation of the turret. Okay. So now that brings us to something that's a little bit more complicated, which is what I included in here that I call team volumes. Now, these are just something that I really included in here to demonstrate how to do team damage or team healing over time. So these may seem a little bit weird and derpy to you guys, but we'll go ahead and talk about them anyway. So same as with everything else in this template, you simply drag in one of these things and you position it wherever it is that you want it, and then you can start manipulating it, right? So same as with everything else, you select it in the level, look in the details panel, and these are the things that you can use to kind of manipulate this turret. This team or this volume. So this would be for the blue team, right? And then you can designate, is this going to be a damage volume or over time, or a healing volume over time? So in this case, we're just going to leave it to damage. You can adjust the box radius in the level here, if you choose to. You can do how much damage it does when you initially overlap it, right? This is the healing too. So when you initially overlap this, you can make it damage you instantly for a specific amount, right? And that's what this is for. Then you have a tick rate. In other words, how often when you're in this does it heal or damage, right? So you can speed that up or slow it down. You can also designate how much health or damage it gives when it does tick here. And then you can also change the sound that it makes when you're being damaged or healing. So I included some placeholder stuff in here. So this would be the damage cue, and then the applied FX. This is what does it display on the player when he is taking damage, right? So I have a particle in here called PS damage volume player. So we select that one. And then there's also some things up here that you can also manipulate. So right now it doesn't display anything. So we would want to put in a visual indication that this is a damage volume. So with the PS fog component selected, we can designate right here the PS damage volume fog, right? So that's just a little crappy particle effect I created to say, hey, this will hurt you. And with that, now this one's ready to go, right? So we can hit play here, and we need to be on the red team, right? Because this is a blue team damage volume. So if anybody in the blue team gets in here, it's not going to hurt them, right? Because it doesn't do team damage. So when a opposite team, the red team, happens to get in here, watch what happens. You can see it damaging me, popping up these little minus signs, and you can see it removing my health over time. So that is how that works. And then to do a healing volume instead, you can literally drag in a brand new blueprint here, or alternately, you can hold down Alt, drag this one over here, and change what you need to be different about this one to make it be a healing volume instead of damage. So the fog here would not be the red fog. It would be the heal fog, which is the same fog, it's just green instead. Then you would also want to go into the class, the details. So select it and go over here to details. And right here, this would be still for the blue team, but this time around, this is going to be a healing volume instead of damage. Once again, you can adjust the size of the little box. The initial amount, so instead this would be how much health do you get instantly when you cross into this volume. What is the tick rate, and then how much health does it give you every time that it ticks. And then of course now the sound effect doesn't need to be the damage cue, it needs to be the healing cue. And then the applied effect, this is the effect that gets applied to a player when it is in this volume. We need this one to be the health volume player. And then if we save that, now this one is set up to be a healing volume over time instead of damage. But we can't really demonstrate that unless we get into 2 players here. So let me set this up to 720 by 512. Uncheck always center window to screen. Then we go to 2 players here and new editor windows, and we will put 1 on the blue and 1 on the red, because I have to damage him before he can get health, right? So if you don't need any health, if you get in the heal volume, it ain't gonna heal you. So if I come over here and maybe try to, oh, I'm shooting the turret, duh. Let me shoot the player, right? You can see I damaged him. So now when he gets in the, once again, this is team based. So if he gets in the blue team damage volume, it ain't gonna do nothing. But when he gets in the health one, you can see that initial overlap triggers, right? So watch the health bar. This is that initial amount. See how it instantly triggers? And then it plays a plus sign particle effect with the green effect, just to let you know that you're receiving health over time. So I know these volumes probably don't make a whole heap of sense to people, but for demonstration purposes, you have to include some things that might not necessarily be that useful. But that is how the team volumes work. So to convert the team, right? So I know that might have seemed like quite a bit of a setup for this, but now that we've did that, now we can take these, hold down the Alt button, drag out 2 copies of them, and all we have to do now is actually just change the team, right? So we've already set up all of our particle effects and all that stuff for this to use. So now all we have to do is just select the volume, and in the details panel, okay, fine, this is still going to be a healing volume, but this one's going to be for the red team. And this is still going to be a damage volume, but this is going to be for the red team. So it's kind of pretty easy to get them copied and pasted around your level after you do that initial setup. And, you know, you don't have to change anything else, right? So now it's going to do exactly what it should do. The only difference is if the red team gets in the damage volume, it won't hurt them. And if the red team or the blue team gets in the healing volume, it won't give them any health, right? So they are definitely team oriented, okay? All right, so that takes care of those little janky volumes that I put in here. So now we're going to talk about another item that is included in this template for map use, which is in the gameplay, Blueprints gameplay, in the level, there is a pickup folder, okay? Now, this pickup is pretty spectacular in the fact that it's one blueprint, but you can generate 3 different types of pickups in this one single blueprint. And it's also team-based. So to use this pickup, all you do is drag it into the level, and then you start, you know, you position it, right? So how high up off the ground do you want it to be? And this is where you start manipulating the pickup. Okay, so same as with all this other stuff, you select it, and in the details panel here, you have some options, right? So this is what kind of pickup do you want this to be? There's 3 kinds. It can be a health pickup, a bullet weapon pickup, or an explosive weapon pickup. So in this case, we're going to make this be a health pickup. We designate the team, right? So this is going to be for the red team, right? So we put that to red, and you can see it changes the little light, spotlight, to red. This is the amount that it gives you. So if this is a health pickup, it's going to give you 25 health. You can change this to whatever you want it to be. At what rate after it's picked up does it come back, right? So these are respawnable. If you pick it up, this is the duration that it waits before it comes back, which you can change. And then also you have to put in a sound effect if you want. So this is going to be a health pickup. So we put in the health pickup cue. And then the final thing here is that it has to have a visual indication of the pickup. And that is done by clicking in the details, the PS pickup. This is where you can put in the health pickup icon, right? And that's the little visual indication of that pickup. And that's it, right? So if a blue team member tries to pick this pickup up, and you have to also need health, right? So if you have full health, you run over this, regardless of what team you're on, you're not going to get any. But if a blue team member needs health and he tries to pick up a red team pickup, it's not going to give him anything. So you can't ninja the other team's pickups is what I'm getting at here. And this was actually a request for this pickup. Normally, I just made them universal and didn't worry about it. But somebody was like, hey, why don't you make those team-based? Oh, there we have it. Now, to make another pickup, right, so remember there's 3 types of pickups in here. You can either drag in a brand new one from here into the level, or alternately, you can alt and drag out a copy of this, and then you just manipulate what needs to be different, right? So in this case, we're going to make this be a bullet pickup. It's still going to be for the red team. We're going to go ahead and let it give us 25 bullets. The respawn timer, we'll just leave it at 10. The only thing else we need to change for this part is now this needs to be a bullet pickup cue. Then we change the visual representation, right? So this will be the bullet pickup. And now we've created our bullet pickup. Then we got one more to do, which is the explosive pickup, right? So once again, we'll just drag out a copy of this. Come over here and change the visual indication, right? So this will be the explosive pickup, which is this one. We're going to go ahead and let it continue to give us, we need to change this to explosive, still for the red team. We're still going to, let's just change this to 8, right? So this one's only going to give us 8. We'll go ahead and just leave the time the same. And then we will change this to the explosive pickup cue. And now with that, we have done it, right? So we have all 3 of our team-based pickups in here. And once again, we can do that same little trick that we did before, which is we will reselect, we will select all these, and we will hold down the Alt key, drag out copies of these, and we'll move these over here, and these can be the blue team variants of these. And since we already have these set up, now all we have to do is just change the team over to be for the blue team. That's it. All that's required. Now these will function. If the blue team needs ammo, explosive ammo, they pick it up. It'll come back in 10 seconds. If the red team comes over here and tries to grab this pickup, regardless of whether they need it or not, they can't have it, right? Because it's not for their team. And I guess we could just spawn in here real quick and maybe make sure that this works. So if we don't need any ammo, naturally, it's not going to give us any. And this is a bullet pickup, by the way. So if we shoot up some ammo, it doesn't matter if we need it in our clip or not. It's still not going to give it to you. But if we hit the reload key, you can see that our max ammo has decreased now. Now, if we try to pick it up, it will actually give us the amount that we designated for it to give us. And then it will respawn here in whatever time it was that you designated it. In this case, 10 seconds. and then that's the pickup, right? So that's really all you have to do for the pickup. And there's a couple more settings here that I would like to talk about for the manipulation of the level type building stuff, which is the respawn timer, right? So that's actually controlled inside the character blueprint. So if you go into the characters folder under blueprints, you open up the master character blueprint, you will find a variable in here called respawn timer, right? So if you want to change how long the player lays there dead before it auto respawns him, this is where you change that and manipulate that particular value. Okay? Okay. So I think that pretty much covers all the quote-unquote level building stuff. So once again, you guys build your level, utilize these assets, bring them in, set your team starts up, set your turrets up. And by the way, you can have more of these turrets, right? So you can have more than just one. You can literally drag out as many of these as you want. It depends on how lethal you want that area to be, okay? And so these turrets, you know, once again, you guys can go poke around in the settings of those that I showed, and all that stuff. So that pretty much covers it. Now, I know the very next question is going to be probably, well, how do you change the character and the animations? I don't necessarily think I'm going to cover that in this particular video. I think there will need to be probably one more, because that is a little bit of an in-depth process, because there's quite a bit that needs to be talked about because of the way that this character is built, right? So most people who do a first-person game, you guys are aware that they just take the third-person character and stick a camera on the head of the character with a socket. That is not how this template is made. This template actually uses 3 completely different meshes to represent your playable character. So you have a set of arms only, you have a lower torso, and you have a full body, right? And that's what makes up the visuals of this character. So we'll talk about that in another video. So another thing that, you know, probably will get asked is about the weapons, right? So this character has 2 weapons, right? So he has a hit scan auto fire weapon, which is this. And then he also has a projectile based explosive AoE weapon, which is this. And naturally you guys would be wondering, okay, so how do you change the weapon? Well, I think I'm going to save that for the same video that we talk about the character. I think I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone in that. But what I would like to talk about is that these weapons are able to be manipulated, okay? So back in the blueprints folder, if you go back underneath gameplay, you will notice that we have a weapons folder here. And in the weapons folder, we have several different blueprints in here, okay? One of these is called BP Weapon Master. Then there is a BP Projectile Weapon Master, a BPC Weapon Launcher, and a BPC Weapon Assault Rifle, and a BPC Projectile Weapon. So hopefully you guys understand what's happening here. So there is a Master Weapon Blueprint, and there is a Master Projectile that is meant for the weapon blueprint. And these blueprints here are child blueprints of these master blueprints. So a master blueprint is a blueprint that basically just contains all the logic that makes the gun do what it does. Then by making these things be variables and stuff like that, you see how when I click the class defaults here, you see how all this stuff over here is essentially blank, right? So in other words, this is a weapon template, okay? You don't really, you build all your logic inside this blueprint, but this is not what you use in the game, you use a child blueprint of this master blueprint, which has all these exact same things in it, but you manipulate them in the child blueprint, not the master. So you simply take the blueprint. Like if you guys want to try to make a new weapon, you take the master blueprint, you right click and you say create child blueprint. So I'm going to go ahead and do this and just open this up and show you guys that this is a blank weapon, right? So at this point you start building your weapon, right? You're like, okay, so what is the mesh of this weapon going to look like? Right? And notice that there's actually two meshes in here. There's one that's used for the first person view, and there's a different one used for the third person view. So technically they are exactly the same weapon. So you put the same weapon in here twice. Then you go into the class defaults here and you can start manipulating it, right? So you can change the name of the weapon. That is what is displayed in the lower left corner in the UI. That's where that weapon name comes from. You probably won't be manipulating these, right? Just make sure that your new weapon has these sockets on them, named the same as this, and you don't have to change it. The firing mode, there's only two, right? Remember, this is a basic template. So you have single fire and you have auto fire. Then you can determine by checking this box here, is it an auto fire weapon? You set that true if you intend for this to be an auto fire weapon, as well as this enumeration would be set to auto fire. You can determine here, is this going to be a hit scan weapon, yes or no? By simply checking that true or false. If it is a hit scan weapon, then you need to designate how much damage is said hit scan weapon going to do. You can also check, is this a bullet weapon or is this an explosive weapon, right? So this is what determines whether or not you can pick up the bullet pickup or the, this is the kind of ammo that is required, right? And so then if it's not a hit scan weapon, meaning you didn't check this true, then you need to put in a projectile. And we'll talk about the projectile in a minute. But currently there's one child blueprint for this particular weapon, which would be this one. BP_C, which stands for child. So that's the child blueprint of the master projectile that I include in this little project, which we'll talk about that in a minute. Then you have how long after you reload do you want to wait before you enable the player to shoot again. If it's an auto fire weapon, what rate of fire is it going to use? If it's not an auto fire weapon, it's a single fire weapon, you can designate a cooldown. In other words, how fast can you squeeze the trigger on that single fire weapon and shoot, right? That's what this firing cooldown is. This does do a sphere trace. Regardless of whether you're using a hit scan weapon or not, it still needs to do a line trace, a sphere trace. That is what this value is. How big around is the trace? You wouldn't want this to be ginormous, but essentially you would want this to be what size do you want to mimic it having the bullet, right? So if it's a projectile bullet, you might want to set this to 3 or 4. If it's a bullet weapon, you might want to set this to 1 or 1.5, right? It just makes it easier to hit things without having to shoot it with a little skinny line, right? So instead of doing line traces like most people do, if you want it to be a line trace, by all means, just leave the radius at 0, right? And then it's a line trace. But I always use a sphere trace so that I can fatten that little skinny line up just a hair. Nothing stupid, but just a hair to make it easier to hit the player, right? Otherwise, you have to hit him with that little skinny line that a line trace fires, which you may or may not be okay with, okay? And then, of course, this is the range. So once again, regardless of whether or not this is a hit scan weapon, it does need a range. Generally, I put in 4, 5, 6,000 units, something like that. And then you can also decide the spread, right? So This does have spread that you can adjust. How much ammo can this weapon carry, right? How much ammo, total ammo can this weapon carry? That's what this max ammo count is. The max ammo clip size is how big is the magazine in the weapon before it runs out. So in other words, max ammo would be something like, okay, this weapon has a total of 200 ammo, but yet every 25 shots, he has to reload, right? That is what your max ammo clip size is, okay? And then, of course, you can also define what montage what plays when the weapon is shooting, right? So that's what all these are for. What firing animation montage is it going to play? What reload animation montage is it going to play? What put away weapon, switch weapon is it going to play? What bring back after you've switched weapon animation are you going to play? This is the sound it makes when you switch weapons. This is the sound it plays when you are using a single fire weapon. This is the sound it makes when you reload. This is what particle effect plays when the weapon shoots. This is if it's set to be an auto fire weapon, what sound effect this would be a looping sound, right? That's what this would be. Auto fire muzzle flash. So if it's an auto fire, you would likely want to use a looping muzzle flash. The sound it makes on an auto fire weapon when you stop shooting. So an auto fire sound is played via loop. Well, when you quit shooting, you don't want it to abruptly just stop. So the shot in sound is the little echo that goes off into the distance for a moment after you stop shooting your auto fire weapon. And then if it's a hit scan weapon, this would be where you define what sound it makes when the hit scan hits. This is the particle effect it plays when the hit scan hits. And then the rest of these you do not need to use unless you want to just change the color of the weapon, which you can manipulate this color of the weapon, which is just, you know, change the color of the gun. That's essentially it. So that's the manipulation of the weapon, right? And so there's that. Now let's talk quickly about the projectile. So the weapon projectile is essentially the same thing. The master is just a blank, right? It doesn't have anything in it. So you right click, create a child blueprint, and then that is the one that you can plug in all your parameters into. Luckily, this one ain't quite as complicated as going over the weapon. The weapon systems that I build, guys, they have a lot of functionality to them. So the visual indication of the projectile. Now, keep in mind, there's two. You have a first-person projectile representation, and you have a third-person projectile representation. So essentially, it's the same as the weapon. You put the exact same one in for the first and third, right? This is where you put the sound that the projectile makes as it's flying through the air. And then in the class defaults, you have some things in here that you can manipulate, such as how much damage does it do? What's the explosive radius of the weapon? Does it have inheritance, yes or no? If it does have inheritance, how powerful is it? 1 is 100% inheritance, 0.5 is 50%, 0.25 is 25% inheritance, right? What sound does it make when the projectile hits something? What particle effect does it play when the projectile hits something? And this inheritance value here, you really don't mess with that. And then, what am I forgetting here? What am I forgetting here? Oh, once again, it has a projectile movement component, which is the manipulation of the speed of the projectile, whether or not the projectile has any gravity or not, whether it bounces or not, okay? So that's essentially the projectile. And now what I want to do is look at a weapon child blueprint that we created. from the master. So we will look at the hit scan assault rifle. So this is what it looks like after it's all filled out. Okay, so we can open the full blueprint editor. You will be able to look in the visuals here and see that I've got the same weapon mesh plugged in. I did manipulate the color of the weapon in the class defaults. I changed it to yellow, and it's filled out, right? So the name of this weapon is assault rifle. It uses the weapon socket, which is the name of the socket on the end of the barrel of this gun. Oh no, that's the one that it attaches to, right? In the character's hand. That's the hand weapon socket on the character. This is actually the name of the socket on the end of the gun. You can see I have this set to auto fire. Auto fire is checked true. It is a hit scan weapon. The hit scan damage amount is 10 for every shot. Is explosive? No. It's a hit scan weapon, so we don't need a projectile. The reload delay is 2 seconds, so after you mash the reload button, you have to wait 2 seconds before the gun's ready to be fired again. The firing cooldown, it's a hit scan weapon. It's an auto fire weapon, so really there is no cooldown, but you could theoretically put in a value here if you wanted to make them, after they let off the trigger and the auto fire stops, if you want them to wait a little bit before they can shoot again, you can put in a little bit of a delay here. Then you can see that I've got the radius set to 2, the range is set to 4,000, the spread amount set to 0.75, max ammo. I'm not going to sit here and go through every bit of this crap, but you guys can see how this is filled out. And then as a quick reference, we will look at the launcher child blueprint, and you can see this is filled out. The difference being that it's a single fire mode instead of auto, which means we don't need auto fire. It's not hit scan, so we don't have that checked. We don't have a damage amount because the projectile is actually what's administering the damage to the player, which is defined in the child blueprint. And you can see that we plugged in a projectile, which is the child blueprint of that master projectile. And then everything else, right? And then, of course, if you open the full blueprint editor, you can see that in the viewport, oh, I'm looking at the gun. Why did I open the gun? I meant to open this, right? Son of a. Yeah, so Jesus H Christ, these videos, guys, I tell you what, this is complicated stuff, guys. And it takes a lot of explanation. If people buy this, I want them to understand how to manipulate it, right? Most people don't bother doing that. They just, hey, look, I bought a template. Well, good luck figuring that shit out. I try to go out of my way to make it so you understand what this is and what you're buying and what you do with it. So yeah, so there's that. Okay. And once again, I'm not going to sit here and go through all this, but you know, you manipulate all these values here. You go in the class defaults, look around. There's things in here that you can tinker with. And all that stuff. And then the end result of that is then what you would plug into the character. So there is one more thing here that we should talk about, which is, okay, so Mr. Galt, I have took your advice. I created me a child blueprint of the weapon, and I filled it all out, got it all plugged up, got all my special particles and everything that I want to use. How do I get the damn thing on the character at this point? Well, that's actually pretty easy to do. You simply go into the characters folder, into the blueprints, open up the character master blueprint, and if you look in the class defaults, you're going to see that you have a slot to plug in a primary weapon and a secondary weapon. So once you create your child blueprint, your shiny new one, when you hit this list, if you want it to be designated as the primary weapon, meaning the weapon that the character starts with in his hand, you plug it in here, right? You just make sure you get the right one. So if you created a child blueprint and called it BPC John Galt's weapons suck, I'm using this one. Well, that's what you would look for in here, right? And then you can also then just plug in whatever you want as your secondary weapon. The catch to this is it has to be a child blueprint of the master weapon that is included in this project, right? And if you guys want to expand the logic in the master weapon blueprint, that's exactly what it's for. You want to add new firing modes, you go into the master weapon, add a new firing mode to the weapon enumeration, and script in what needs to be different in order to make it be a burst fire or a shotgun fire. But that's beyond the scope of what these videos are for, right? I'm not going to show you guys how to build all that stuff. That's why I sell templates. You come in here, tear it apart, and you figure out how I did it. Okay? It's all commented, and you can follow all the breadcrumbs right through. But that is how that works. Okay? And I believe that is all that I need to cover in this video. So the only two things that we really have left that we'll cover in another video is how to change the character, right? Because nobody wants to be a dummy, right? Nobody wants to be a gray dummy. You guys are going to want to use custom characters. So we will put that in another video, and we will also change the weapon in the character's hand, and we will change the particle effects that are on those weapons. In other words, we're going to use different muzzle flashes, different firing sounds, different weapon meshes. So that will come in another video. This is the basics of the manipulation of this template. The next one we will cover the important part, which is how to change the character to a different mesh, and how to change the weapon to a different mesh, as well as all these sound effects and everything that goes along with it. But that's it, guys. So let me bring Chad over here. I noticed some of you guys showed up. So, hey, Oni, what's happening, dude? Hey, John, my friend. Hey, Ripper Junkie. I hope your mom is feeling better and recovering. Yeah, she's doing okay, but it's still going to be a long haul. You know, you don't just have a stroke and then the next day everything's kosher. So that's going to be a while, but she's doing okay other than that. What did I miss? You missed everything, right? So you'll have to go back and watch this video. This looks perfect for the laser tag shooter. It may be, right? You guys know I build these templates as a couple things, right? One is a demonstration of how all these things talk and work together in a real world game type environment. And then of course the other is you buy one of my starter templates, whether it's the capture the flag, the teams and class select, or this FPS basic, and you start building on top of this, right? So if you want to make a laser tag game out of this, you buy this template, you start here, and you start changing all the things that need to be different in order to achieve that laser tag game that you're trying to make. So it could be done, right? It could be done. And so that's it, guys. So this template is not available on the UE4 marketplace just yet. It is in the review process. So theoretically, if everything goes right and they don't find a heap ton of crap that I have to change to conform to their standards on the marketplace, hopefully this will be for sale on the marketplace by next Friday-ish. If you're impatient and you don't want to wait, you can buy this directly from me. I will give you guys a $10 discount if you buy it directly from me. So it's going to be $19.99 on the UE4 marketplace if you choose to buy it directly from me before it gets onto the marketplace. Once it gets onto the marketplace, I'm not going to be selling it personally anymore. The only way you will get it after that is on the marketplace. But if you guys want this now, this very moment, up and until it's approved and on the marketplace for sale, anyone who wants it, I will give it to you for a $10 discount, which means it will be $9.99, $10. And you guys can get it directly from me. How do you do that? Click the contribute to this channel button or my PayPal link in any of the descriptions of my videos. When you send the $10 to PayPal, it gives you the option of typing in a message in the transaction. make sure that you say, I want the multiplayer FPS basic template. Here's your $10. Here is the email address I need you to send me my download link to, right? Very important, guys. You guys would be shocked at how many damn times I get that stuff and they leave it out. They're like, they don't give me the email address, and then I have no way to send them the damn download link. So then I have to wait for them to get pissed off. Hey, how come you didn't send me my download link, you jackass thief scam artist? Hey, how come you can't follow simple instructions? I need a goddamn email address to send it to. Hello, right? So there you go, guys. So if you want it before it's on the marketplace, $10. After that, it's going to be $19.99 unless it happens to go on sale for some percentage off, which I generally don't do. I sell my stuff so cheap anyways. There really ain't much point in putting it on a 50% sale. $5.99, 50% of that's what, $2? Yeah, it's only $5.99 to begin with. So I might put this on sale at some point, but then again, don't count on it because I might not. John, are you going to do another live stream today? I don't know if I will or not. I don't know. It depends. If I do, it'll be later this afternoon, like 5 or 6 o'clock. You know, 5 or 6 o'clock would probably be more along the lines of when I would do it. If I do, I don't know what I'll stream about, but I might. I don't know. Maybe I'll do the second part of this video, which will be the changing of the character mesh and the weapon mesh and all that stuff. But if not, I don't know. Maybe we can find something to get into. This is the FPS template that Epic provides. It should be in the first place. Yeah, I agree. Their first-person template is garbage. There's no two ways about it. It is a shitty template. Period. Which is exactly why you can find videos on my YouTube page called Let's Make the Default FPS Template Suck Less, right? And there's 2 parts to that. So you guys could go look at that, or you could just wait and then throw me a bone, buy this template, and you will have a awesome first-person template to start from any first-person project that you choose to do, right? That would be awesome. And I don't really know how to say this name. Is it Fakeal? Do you think that making a character camera as a separate blueprint with its animation blueprint is giving a better control on the camera? I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Oh, Fakeal. Okay, cool. I'm not really sure what you're asking. If you're asking how this is set up in this project, it really isn't a separate camera, right? So just to clarify what this is, while maybe you can clarify what specifically it is you're asking about, there is no transition from first to third in this template. Like, you can't mash a button and then pan out and see your full body. This is straight up first person view only. However, the people that are looking at you, let me go ahead and sprint over here. They do see your full body mesh, right? So they don't see your arms or your lower torso or any of that stuff. And so that's how this is set up. So in the character blueprint here, in the viewport, you can see that there's only a single camera in here, right? And this is the camera that is used at all times by the player. So if you're asking, like, most people who set up first person, they just simply want to put the camera on the head of this third person dummy, right? Or the third person character, which is a term that they call true first person, right? And honestly, guys, I will just tell you straight up, it's a shitty way to make a first-person game by doing that. And anyone that would tell you any otherwise is an idiot. And they don't know how to make games because obviously they don't understand all the drawbacks that come with that camera being on the head of a character, which means the camera is moving via the animations that are playing, right? Which then means your crosshair is moving because why? Because the crosshair is generally projected from the camera. Well, if the goddamn camera is moving all over the place, how the hell are you ever going to get an accurate bead on something to shoot, right? So there is a lot of reasons why it is far superior to create a first-person view using this method, not sticking a camera on the head of a character. So people can argue semantics back and forth all they really want to. They are never going to change my mind that sticking a camera on the head of a character is the way you make a first-person game. They're literally never going to convince me of that because I happen to know of all the drawbacks that come along with doing that. And so with that being the case, this does not suffer from that phenomenon, right? Because the camera is not attached to the arms of the character. The character's arms are attached to the camera. Well, the camera is what projects the crosshair, right? So that crosshair that's in the center of the screen, that is being projected by the camera. Well, if the camera, see how this character is sitting here breathing? You see this? If the camera was attached to the character, that means that that camera would be moving when you're not even moving, right? It would be moving, the crosshair would be moving as this character's animation, his breathing is happening. Well, then that means the gun is going to, the crosshair is going to constantly be sitting here doing this, right? Well, then if you start running, that means that that crosshair is going to be bouncing, right? Which then means if you're trying to shoot at something, you've got to take into account all that movement that's happening with that damn crosshair based on the animation, based on the movement of the character, the jumping. Well, when you look at it this way, look how much movement the animation has, but look at the crosshair. It's dead nut still. Exactly the way that it should be when you're trying to make a goddamn shooter game. Who wants to play a shooter game where you have ass inaccurate weapons? Raise your hand. That should be said no one ever, right? So here's my belief and philosophy when it comes to creating shooter games. I want the dead nuts most pinpoint accurate weapon that I could possibly have. Literally, I want to be able to put that crosshair on a fly, squeeze the trigger, and hit his ass. Then, to simulate inaccuracy, you go in there and you add things like weapon spread. You could add recoil. You could add knockback, whatever it is that you want to do. But you've got to start with a dead nuts pinpoint accurate weapon. Then you can script in logic in ways to fuck it up and make it not be deadly, right? As deadly. It has spread, it has recoil, it has a cooldown, all that stuff. But what you can't do, and this is important, listen up, guys. You can't take a shitty, inaccurate weapon and suddenly make it be able to be a pinpoint accurate sniper rifle, right? You can't, because it's inaccurate to begin with. So start with a pinpoint accurate weapon and then fuck it up as much as you want to in order to make it where you can't insta-kill headshots, right? That's how you do it. Okay, so if that's what you're asking about, do not put the camera on the head of a character. And if that's what that advanced locomotion does, which I'm sure it does, that just makes that even much less desirable template. It's already convoluted and complicated. I've already said that to you guys. I've opened it, I've looked at it, I've dicked with it. It's just a big heaping complicated mess. Does it look cool? Yeah. But if they've done their first person view by sticking that on there and then they're giving you a gun in the character's hand, good luck, right? Good luck with that, because you're going to have complaints out the wazoo. How come this damn weapons, you know, they're going to tell you things like, you need to reduce the spread of this weapon, I can't hit shit, right? That's what your comments are going to be, but that's not what's causing it to be inaccurate. It's because the damn animation's moving around. It's moving the camera, constantly moving the crosshair. Has nothing to do with the weapon spread, right? So that's just my personal opinion about it. You guys can take it for what it's worth. You can agree with me. You can disagree with me. If you like true first-person view, by all means, knock yourself out. But if you want a really good professional grade first-person shooter game, you're not going to achieve that by sticking the camera on the head of a character. Is it easier? Absolutely, and that's why everybody does it that way, right? You guys would be shocked at how much work it took to get this all built and displaying correctly for multiplayer visually, right? It's complicated. It's literally complicated. So naturally, I understand why people just stick the camera on the head and be done with it and call it a day. But this feels like a professional game. I promise you guys, if you buy this template and you run around in a PvP environment shooting each other, this will feel like a professional AAA game. Even though it may not look like one, it will feel like one. Why? Because I promise you, every single professional first-person shooter game you guys have ever played is not got the camera stuck on the head of a damn character. I promise you that. Sorry if it sounds like I got off on a tangent, and maybe I did. But you know, honestly, guys, it infuriates me. People that are, you know, look, I'll just say it this way, right? You guys realize that every video that I make for you guys and try to share information with you, I don't half-ass nothing, right? I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that. I don't half-ass nothing. My videos are longer because we talk about a lot of things. And the reason that we talk about these things is because they matter and they're important. I could make a 5-minute video and show you guys how to make a first-person shooter game. Literally, I can make a 5-minute video and show you guys how to do that. The problem is it's going to be like every other person on the internet trying to show people how to make a first-person shooter game, which is you stick the camera on the fucking head of a character and call it a day. Would you guys rather, it infuriates me to watch people that are trying to do tutorial videos. Like, I can't watch them. Like, I literally can't watch other people's videos anymore because they're showing people the instant gratification 5-minute route. When I'm sitting there watching it, I'm going, yep, and that's going to be fucked, and that's going to be fucked, and that's going to be fucked, and that ain't going to work worth a damn. That's going to suck, and if you do this, well, then you're going to have to go back and rebuild that because that ain't going to work worth a damn, right? So in the long run, let me ask you guys a question. Would you rather watch a 1 or 2 hour video of mine where I'm showing you guys how to do something look, and I can't even say the right way, right? Because there's a million different ways to do everything. That's why I just call it the GALT way, right? I'll show you guys the GALT way of doing something. It takes longer. It may be more complex. It may be more complicated. It may require more clicks of your mouse than some other 5-minute version. But I do it because I've been doing this since 2014 at least. Full time doing this. And I have encountered every single issue from every single one of the tutorial videos that you guys watch somewhere else, right? So when they show you how to make a first-person shooter game or spawn a projectile or try to replicate something, go ahead and follow that video. Go ahead. I guarantee you there's going to come a point in that project where you're going to come to the conclusion that, wait a minute, holy fuck, this is not going to work. This is literally not going to work because now I'm going to have to go back and change all this stuff that I've already did by following these little shitty 5-minute videos. And now I've come to a complete show-stopping roadblock in my project that there's no getting around except going back and starting from the ground up again. I try to save you guys that. Because I've built and rebuilt projects so many goddamn times that I have learned from my mistakes. I'm like, oh, no. Yeah, that's easier to do that way, but goddamn it, you're going to regret it in the end. Believe me, you're going to regret it. And so that's why I try to, you know, talk a lot more about what it is that I do. And that's why I've tried to put myself in a different class than your average tutorial person. I'm not here to give you guys instant gratification. I'm not here to try to build a ginormous following. I'm here to try to share what I've learned from my own personal experience on my own, not taught by anyone else, by trial and error and making all those mistakes that I see all these other people in tutorials setting you guys up for, right? That's what I see. And I try to save you guys that. And all I ask for in return is a kickback every now and then. A contribution to my YouTube page. Well, you know what? That damn John Gall, he may be an ornery bastard. He may have a southern accent. He may talk like a hillbilly. But when it comes down to it, at least he cares enough to try to go out of his way. If you're going to bother showing somebody how to do something, you should do it right and not just try to give them a 5-minute video because that's all the time they want to invest in learning how to do something. If that's all the time you've got to invest to learn how to do something is 5-minute videos, you might as well just go ahead and uninstall the engine, right? Because you're never going to get anywhere. It takes dedication. It takes trial and error. It takes experimentation. It takes devotion. And there's no getting around that. I don't care how many templates you guys buy. I don't care how many tutorial 5-minute videos you watch. You're never going to get anywhere if you're not willing to put the work into doing it. It's simply not going to happen. And so my suggestion to you guys is this. If you're going to bother learning how to do this, would you rather invest the time and dedication into learning it the right way or a better way? Or would you rather try to just cram together a bunch of crap in a tutorial video that you get a 5-minute video every week and it only takes 10 of the 5-minute videos and voila, you've made a game? Have you fucking really made a game? The answer to that is no, right? It's just simply no. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out here. Let me go ahead and read all the rest of the comments. Hopefully you will be able to live stream later on today. One of those surfing and digging around UE4s. I don't know. I don't know if I will or not. We'll see. And then he says in advanced locomotion system, he made the camera as a separate blueprint and the camera as a skeletal mesh and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I think I understand what you're saying. But then my question becomes this. Is it expensive to spawn actors into the game engine? It is, right? That's why you need to keep that to a minimum, right? And if you're going to be spawning millions of projectiles, right, at inordinate amounts of fire rates, you're going to be spawning in, you know, maybe trees and doors and whales and snails and all that stuff comes at a cost. So here's what I would say. If you have a choice of making a first-person game the way that I just described with these 3 meshes, and it saves you having to spawn a separate actor that you then rig up onto the character somehow to make it where you don't have that janky head shake movement with the camera, shouldn't the goal be to try to spawn as few things into your game as possible? The answer to that should be yes. So can you add a separate actor and then attach it to the character or however the hell it is you want to do it to get around a problem that shouldn't exist in the first place if you did it the right way, right? So the goal should be to spawn as few things as possible, because think about this, just from a death perspective. The character dies, you destroy the actor, you respawn him, it spawns a new camera and every component attached to him, right? Well, that's one extra spawn thing that shouldn't have to exist, right? So I don't know, man. once again, everybody's got their own preferences and stuff. It just so happens to believe that you're never going to convince me that there's any better way to do first person view in a game than using 3 separate meshes and 2 separate animation blueprints. It just works. It's tried and true and has been done that way for thousands of years. No, it ain't been quite that long. But, you know, all the way back from the days of, you know, the first Doom and the first Quake, you know, it's always been first person view as a set of arms. If you want to be able to see your lower torso when you look down, you incorporate another mesh that is simply the lower torso of the character. Then if you're doing multiplayer and other people need to see you, you then incorporate your third person mesh for them to be able to see it. That's just the way that it's been done. And there's a reason that it's been done that way for so long. And you need to ask yourself that reason. Why? Why has it always been done that way? Because that's the best way to do it. That's why. All right. Does everything use the epic skeleton? Yes, this project here that I have created is on the default UE4 skeleton. And the next video that I make where we're going to talk about changing the character and all that stuff, we will literally create all the meshes that are necessary in order to plug them into this first person template. There's a couple ways that you can do it, but we will cover that and I will show you that. Let's see here. Also, if I was to insert a aim down sight system, how easy would it be to replicate? Well, I mean, it really just depends on what kind of aim down sights it is that you're after. You know, there's 2 different ways generally that people do that. One is you move the gun over to the center of the screen, the arms and stuff move over to the center of the screen, and you're actually looking down the little peephole of the gun. And then there's the old school way of doing it, which is you just make the character look like he pulled the gun up to his eye, but you really just change the spring arm and the field of view a little bit. You LARP it to make it look like it has that little zoom effect, but you're really not aiming down the side of the gun. Plus, that would also involve another camera, right? So you would put like a little tiny ass camera on the gun so that when you activate that, it kills your normal camera, and then you look down that little bitty one that's lined up to look down the peephole, right? So, I mean, once again, it depends. Replication is always a fucking nightmare, regardless of what it is. But the more complicated the overall mechanic is, well, then naturally, the more complicated it's going to be to get it to replicate correctly, right? So that's just kind of the way that it is. Exiled veteran, preach, brother. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm excited for this. Made it just in time. I'm using the second camera. Okay. Can you convert your system to C++ only? I only know C++, not really blueprints. So let me just tell you guys what I do professionally. Some of you guys already know this. When I'm actually working on a contract job or something, you guys are full aware that I only work in blueprints, right? That's it. I have never bothered to try to code anything other than HTML. 100 years ago, back when GeoCities was a thing, I tried to make my own crappy website in a notepad document using HTML or some shit. And it didn't take me very long to realize that fuck this, right? So I only visually script. So when I get on a contract job, they already know this, right? Up front, I'll tell them, I will do whatever it is that you want me to do in this contract if I choose to accept it. But what you're going to get is a blueprint version of that. Normally, these people have coders, right? The problem is coders cost a lot more than blueprinters, right? So for a coder to go in there and try to do some of these things that I do in C++ probably is pretty time consuming. a lot of trial and error, a lot of fixing stuff, a lot of testing stuff. And that costs a lot of money, right? Because coders are the guys that make the money. So when I prototype or create something for those people, it always gets delivered to them in blueprints. Then some people choose to, when they package out whatever it is that I made for them, they use the nativization process built right into the Unreal Engine. It is not the same as converting it directly to C++. However, it does increase the performance of the blueprinting a fairly significant amount. The other catch to that is that it's not human readable. So in other words, there's no way for you to nativize your blueprinting and then go in there and look at what it did to convert it over to C++. It is a generic hybrid weird version of C++, right? And so that's one thing that people do that I build things for. The other thing that I do that I do for people, after I deliver them a blueprint only project, they then hand that off to their coder. Their coder then goes and looks through all this stuff to see how it works and how I did it. And then the coder makes a decision as to, well, this is a pretty heavy function, or this is a pretty heavy process. Let's take what he did and use that as a schematic to write a C++ version of that and integrate it natively, right? So that's also a lot of what happens. So as for this project here that I'm demoing and talking to you guys about, if you're a coder, you should be able to follow the breadcrumbs that I've laid out in said project, and you should be able to do your magic and recreate it in C++ if you choose to. And that's the only suggestion that I can give you, because that's happened, right? Like I said, a lot of things that I've built for people has always been in blueprints, and they tell me, well, yeah, after you get it prototyped or whatever, we'll have our coder take a look at it, and we may move this or that or change this or that and nativize it into native C++. But that's their prerogative, right? I don't do that. And Exiled Veteran, it's best to mix the two. Prototype in blueprint and access the performance cost, if any, then start moving heavy. That is exactly what you should do, right? Prototyping in blueprints is super fast. The iteration turnaround time is super quick. You get something working, you stare back and look at it and say, okay, now it's time to move all this over into nativization, right? And so there's that. Let's see here. It's best to mix the two. Asman says, I tried Tom Lumen's co-op shooter Udemy course once, got lost after the movement code. I haven't even tried to look at any of that stuff. It's just like this, guys. I don't have anything against C++ers and purists, if that's what you want to call them. But I have no desire to sit and type in a text document to make a game. None. Zero. If I have to make a game and every single bit of that game is in blueprints, so be it, right? But once again, I'm not making 100-player multiplayer games either. In my small scope, right, 10 players or less and only listen servers, you would be surprised at how much you can get away with by using only blueprints. But if you're going to try to be creating Fortnite in your mom's basement 3 hours on the weekends, there's no way in hell that you're ever going to be able to get 50 players in a listen server using nothing but blueprints, right? That's where the coding comes in. That's where you got to put your money where your mouth is and pay the big bucks, right? Having dedicated servers written, logic to communicate from various different servers so that you can have one server that does player logins. You can have another server that does player inventory. You can have another one that tracks achievements. Yeah, you're not going to do that in Blueprint. I'm sorry, but no. So my scope is always limited. And, you know, when I build something and prototype something, that doesn't mean that it can't be expanded. It just simply means that if you're planning on making Fortnite, you're going to have some money and you're going to have some coders, right? Because I can prototype an idea to see if it's feasible and interesting before you invest a shitload of time and money into having it done in code, buying dedicated servers and whatever else it is that you need to do. You can at least see if you think it's going to be a good idea, right? So there's that. Well, Asman, if you don't understand the basics of coding and go directly to C++, you will have a hard time trying to figure it out. So if I afford your system, would you be able to answer any question that I have during my process of converting some functions to C++? Well, I mean, I'm always happy to answer questions, but you know, I wouldn't be able to say, okay, well, if you want to put this in C++, here's what you got to do. But what my template can do is show you what I did, right? So in other words, how I replicated something. You know, this variable is set to be, I don't know how to do any of that shit in C++, right? But, you know, it would be, I could tell you, well, what I'm essentially doing here is this. Well, then you, being a coder, might be able to say, oh, okay, so I need to write a C++ function that does this, right? So that might be something that you could do, but I don't know if I would be very much help in any kind of a translation from Blueprint to C++. It's essentially, look, here's the thing, and a lot of people don't get this, right? They don't get this. Every single one of those nodes that you are using in Blueprints is a chunk of C++. Every goddamn one of them, from a for each loop to a attach actor to component to a spawn actor from class. That is a little snippet of C++. You can't see it, right? You can't see it, but that is exactly what it is. So when you're scripting in Blueprints, you're dragging around little snippets of C++ and plugging them together in such a way that it does this, right? That's exactly what you're doing. So if you see a node that I've used in a Blueprint, for example, you could open up the C++ variant of that and look at it, right? So I suppose that's how that would work. Okay. Let's see here. It's so fast to get the logic down in Blueprint. Sitting there typing ASCII characters in document and then having to wait for compile times is not the way. That's correct. And you know, it is true. I wouldn't make a game in nothing but C++. Same as I don't think it's feasible to create a large scale game in nothing but Blueprints. It does take a combination of both. Right? I guarantee you Fortnite is using C++ and Blueprints just the same as everybody else is, right? They are. I guarantee you they are. So it ain't like you pick one or the other. My entire game is going to be in C++. You might be able to do that. My entire game is going to be in nothing but Blueprint. You might be able to do that, but the proper course of action would be some things make sense to do in C++ and nativized, mainly for performance reasons. Some things just make sense to do in Blueprint because it's simple and easier. And on top of that, you also have to take into consideration what happens after, right? Like you hear Epic talk all the time about exposing things to Blueprints, right? Same as with materials and all that. You can't have a coder do everything in your game. Because at some point, you're likely going to have players that want to create a new character. Well, how in the hell are they going to get that into the project and load it up and working if it's all done in C++? You have to expose things to allow them access to be able to, oh, okay, expose your version of the character Blueprint so that I can go in there and plug my meshes in and, you know, change his health values and stamina and all that. You worry about what's happening in the C++ code, but here's what I need to be able to edit in order to be able to customize this character to make it look cooler, right? So it's a combination of both, always. 10 years later, 150,000 plus players, game developed by John Galt came out. Yeah, wouldn't that be epic? Yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I understand your point. Just saying, if you wanted to understand C++, you could get it, John. Yeah, it's just not something that flicks my switches. It just really doesn't. That's why my videos are derping videos. I just derp, and things happen. Sometimes cool things happen. Sometimes, what the fuck is this doing that for happens, right? So that's just how it is. Welcome to game dev. Woohoo! 90% of game dev is cussing. That's exactly what it is. And if you can't cuss the engine out, well, then you're not doing it right. So with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and run. I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. And we will see you guys in another video. I don't think I'll stream later. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Subscribe to my channel if you're not, so that maybe potentially you can get a notification if and when I do go live, if YouTube gets up off their ass and sends it to you before the stream is over. So with that, you guys take care, and we will catch you guys in another one. Have a good one.